that moves you. But today, our theme kind of is moving out of scarce city. And if you push the word scarcity together, it means scarcity. And we're going to be talking about facing our fears.
Yeah.
Now, we all have fears, whether we want to admit that or not. I have a fear of heights. I force myself to go up on a hot air balloon or climb up into a lookout tower or something. Many of us have fear of dogs or water or snakes or bugs. What other kind of fears? Anybody have any? Open spaces, I know that's fear. There's all kinds of strange fears out there. And certainly if we watch the news at night or read the news, we get the message that there is a reason for us to fear. What happens in the news reinforces our fears of what may certainly happen to us or can happen to us. We look at the fires in California, we look at the assaults on people, car accidents, and soon we shift into that fear of not having enough, that something bad is going to happen to us. And soon our fears can take over our lives, and we start basing our decisions out of fear instead of out of love. And soon we start living in a scarce city, afraid of what is lurking around the corner or what is just ahead. We're bombarded with commercials telling us what we need to be safe, to be happy, to be beautiful, even to be wealthy, attractive, and popular. And commercials kind of give us this subliminal message that we need to buy this product or that product so that we can be wealthy or beautiful. And so we begin to hoard our own resources so that we will have enough of whatever it is that society tells us that we're lacking or that we could surely use or need. In today's world, we are in a war with the constant bombardment of stuff.
Oh, yeah.
And I talked about this a little bit last week, I think, that I swore off purchasing anything that I have to dust, and it's been very nice. I buy candles, but they burn out and I throw them away. So. But when we're bombarded with the message about purchasing stuff or accumulating stuff, it pounds a message into our brains and into our hearts that is hard to resist. Many of us know that it's not exactly the answer, but its unending call continues to pulsate into our lives from TV, magazines, and internet ads that seem to say this is the best alternative you can have to reach fulfillment. We see the beautiful people with certain stuff, and we think that maybe we could be like them too if only we could drive a Lincoln or maybe use Maybelline products. Maybe we could be like George Clooney or Kim Kardashian. And after all, their lives are so much better than ours. So we develop a mindset that if we have enough stuff, we don't have anything to fear. And it is a false belief. And the more stuff that we start accumulating, the more we can control what happens to us. That's what we begin to think. The more stuff I have around me, the more I can control what is happening to me. Now, another fear we have, which is a really big fear that I have found rampant in the U.S. lately, is people are divided by the fear of others. Other people who are different from us. People who worship differently, come from a different race, a different culture, different language, different features. This tends to make us a little overprotective, and we want to become fence builders. It makes us want to protect our borders to keep us all safe, because after all, those people trying to seek refuge are certainly terrorists, and they're out to hurt us. So we're kind of moving into living in this age of what I call cocoonism, where we like to cocoon ourselves into our safe little world, our safe little home with a security system, fences around us. We build walls around us emotionally and physically until soon, rather than offering safety and freedom, we find ourselves trapped behind the very walls we built to protect ourselves. We start living in a prison of stuff, in a prison of being separate, in a prison of being suspicious of everybody and anybody who may think or believe differently or look differently than we do. And I always like finding out these little kind of facts things, and if you're into trivia or anything like that, but there's a National Geographic is doing this, what they call the Genographic Project, and it's really fascinating. And it's a team of renowned scientists who are using cutting-edge genetic technologies to analyze the historical patterns of our DNA. Remember, DNA became popular with that famous trial of somebody, what's his name? You know, that's it, the trial of Simpson, yeah. That's when DNA became popular, when scientists began to understand a little bit more about it. And science is continuing to search for details about the incredible journey that took humans from Africa to the far reaches of the earth. How did each one of us end up where we are? How did the Chinese end up in China, the Japanese in Japan, the Native Americans here? And why do we have such a wide variety of colors and features in the human race? And they're saying that the full story of our ancestry is written in our genes, and not the blue genes that we wear, but the GENES genes. And that when DNA is passed from one generation to the next, most of it is kind of recombined by the processes that give each of us our own individuality. But some parts of the DNA chain remain largely intact throughout the generations, altered only occasionally by random mutations, which becomes what we call genetic markers. And looking into these genetic markers allows scientists to trace our common evolutionary timeline back many generations, which is really fascinating. I think they've said that we're all kind of really related to one human, Adam and Eve, Adam and Steve, Lucy and Lily. Last week we talked a little bit about Native American teaching that we are all related, we are all connected, we're all relatives, and there is some truth to that. We are all connected. We're all very much the same, even though we are different in how we look, how we think, what we believe in our cultures. So we have two areas of fear that we need to think about. Fear of not having enough, fear of what might happen to us, and fear of people who are different from us. So when we allow fear to rule us, that's when we move into our attitude of scarcity. And our decisions are based on fear and not on the promises of God. Moses, who led the Israelites out of Egypt, spent 40 years on a journey with his people, leading them to the promised land, a land that had been promised by God to the Hebrew people. I also need a shelf under here. My mind is, I'm all over the place today. We used to have a shelf right under here that the drink would fit perfectly. If anybody could fix that, you'd be my best friend forever. I don't think it's difficult. But. So the Israelites were preparing to enter into the promised land. So Moses sent out a couple of spies to check out the land first, which is kind of logical. And so the spies come back and they report to Moses what they saw, which of course created fear among the people. They told Moses, yes, we went into the land that you sent us, and it surely does flow with milk and honey. But the people who live there are very powerful, and the cities are very fortified and very large. Now, one can almost imagine the people of Israel saying some of the very same things we might say. You want us to do what, God? You want us to go into this strange country? You expect us to go into this land with those giants and those walls and forts? Certainly you must have a better plan or another plan that I could follow. And so faith was ruling them. And then, as well as now, the issue is the same. Do we live in a place of faith, or do we live in a place of fear? There is that voice of fear that shouts out to us, you can't, you mustn't, don't do it, be afraid. What if? But that is not the only voice. If we take the time to be quiet, to turn off the news, to put down our newspapers, we will hear another voice. The voice of God who assures us through the prophet Isaiah, don't fear, because I am with you. Don't be afraid, because I am your God. I will strengthen you. I will surely help you. I will hold you in my righteous, strong hand. Pretty powerful words from the prophet Isaiah. Don't fear, because I am with you. Don't be afraid, I am your God. So the question becomes, which voice are we going to listen to? The one of faith or the one of fear? Now, every church has two committees, two basic committees. There's the Back to Egypt committee, which is ruled by fear and anxiety. And then there's the Into the Promised Land committee, which is ruled by faith and hope. And hopefully, whatever teams we're on, or ministries we do, or decisions we make, are based on Into the Promised Land committee, which is ruled by faith and hope. Yes, we need to be practical at times. We can't go out and do certain things that we would like to do. But we can't also have that back to Egypt mentality where fear and anxiety rule what decisions we make. So which committee would you rather serve on? One that lives into the promised land, into God's promises for us all, that is ruled by faith and hope? do you want to stay stuck in that fear and anxiety and go back to Egypt? As we enter into our stewardship and our pledge drive, it's not about balancing the budget or raising enough money to pay the bills. It's certainly not about that. For me, it is about the vision of sharing the love of God through Jesus Christ to others. Amen. Transforming the lives of people, one person at a time, people who are hungry, hurting, lonely, afraid, lost, confused, have no place to go, haven't found out what their purpose is. And that's my passion, to transform people one person at a time, take that time. And that's what it's about when we do our pledges, when we balance our budget, when we bring in the money. It's about changing the lives of the people around us, to provide a place of hope and a place of love, where the love of God is preached and not the fear of God.
Amen.
Where the grace of God is preached and not the judgment of God.
Mm-hmm.
You know, Abram, which later became Abraham, had a vision in which God came to him and said, "Don't be afraid, Abram. I am your shield and your reward will be great." Now, Abram and Sarah were childless, and back then that was a really tragic thing to be. And Abram mourned the loss that he could not have children to carry on his legacy. And he said once again, "God, what will you give me, for I continue to be childless?" And so God brought Abram outside. It was nighttime. He said, "Look toward heaven and count the stars, and if you are able to count them." And then he said, "That's how many your descendants shall be." And Abram believed in God. So I'm going to ask you tonight to go outside and count the stars, as many as you can. Name one of your fears that you may have. A fear of not having enough, a fear something bad's going to happen, a fear of your neighbor who might be different from you. In the midst of our doubts, in the midst of our wondering, ask God, will this really happen? Mm-hmm. God has invited us as a faith community to count our stars, to remember the faces of children and young people, families and the elderly, lives that will be touched because of what you are doing. It's not about buildings or bricks or mortar or dollars and cents. It's about living out our faith through the promises of God. God bless you.
Amen.